keeps coming in my head is the part of knowing too much. So sometimes I feel like, so this is kind of controversial, but I feel like poor people are happier than rich people because they know too less. Sometimes knowing too much is a problem. And when I didn't know about like kind of the spiritual side of like your purpose and everything, I feel like life was simple and then it's complicated. How can you kind of all this so much knowledge out there and so much chaos out there, kind of have a simple life which is still fulfilling and there's not too much going on in your head?
I think it comes down to living with intention. That is key. And just to talk about the rich and the poor for a moment, you can have happy rich people and depressed rich people. You can also have happy poor people and depressed poor people. So I think it's less to do with your financial situation, but it's more to do with how you respond to the cards that you have been dealt in your life. I remember meeting a cleaner in the place I used to live, and she would be singing every morning. She would be giving her to the job. She would wave hello to all the residents. And when I connected with her again a few years later, she had been promoted to manager of that company. Now, what that showed me was that yes, she came from a place where she was poor, where the only job she could get was being a cleaner. But her attitude to her position, to her setup, to the cards she had been dealt, was so different to the majority. So I think to some extent, your financial situation can be an easy excuse. I'm rich, I've got lots of problems, or I'm poor, I've got lots of problems. Well, whatever you believe is going to hold you back, it will hold you back. And so I think if we want to live with simplicity, it comes by living with intention. What is important to me? And what do I need to keep out so I can continue living the life I want to live? We as humans, we tend to overcomplicate it. We tend to overcomplicate it because we think that the answer can't be simple. Yep. The answer can't be, I just have to do this and it will work out. So we look for something more complicated. And then what happens is we pile all of this knowledge on top of us, and now we're lost as to what the way forward is. Yeah. We read this book and this philosophy and that philosophy. Then we say, wait, but he or she said that, and now he or she said something different, so now we're confused. And the thing is, knowing what works for you, and I think this is actually one of life's greatest achievements, is understanding what is your philosophy. Now, there will be the Simon philosophy of living, there will be your philosophy of living, there will be my parents' way of living. But if you can begin to take bits and pieces of other people's work that resonates, and you say, well, how does that work for me? And you take those inputs, whether it's a book you read, whether it's a seminar you attended or a speech you've listened to, and you then take those influences to design your own philosophy, I think that is what matters most.
I like that. I mean, all the things you're saying is just going straight in here, and I'm it's opening another perspective in my brain about how to live life with simplicity. Because I feel like since I started my journey, in the start, everything was simple. But as you progress through the journey, there's so much coming, so much. And then you're like, oh my Lord, there is so much here that now I can't even live the simple life I used to live.
Well, I don't know who originally said this quote, but it just pops in my head now as you were speaking. And the quote goes something like this: in the beginning of every business journey, you have to say yes to everything in order to get far. But as you experience success, you then have to say no to nearly everything in order to continue with what you built.
Yes. And I think saying no is difficult, but I think it's really important as you progress through the journey as well. The knowledge you have gained, it's amazing. And did you just go through your life from leaving the job and then trying out businesses and then becoming a life coach? And if that's your journey, but how did you kind of gain all this knowledge of information? Because it's amazing.
Yeah, sure. So I think that even though I left the corporate world to become an entrepreneur, that wasn't the beginning of my knowledge and insight I've built. Because even when I was in my job as a financial analyst, I was still reading personal development. I was still enjoying following a lot of what was going on in the personal development world. But the fact when I made the jump, I was then able to apply that. I think that was the magic, because just reading, just listening is just theory. It's like going to a business school and getting an MBA. You've got the business degree, but unless you actually start a business, you can't put any of that into action. And so it remains just theory. And so when I was able to start putting that into action, I think that's when the wisdom started to blossom, because I was like, oh, actually, this doesn't make sense, or actually, this makes sense. I'm going to tweak this actually, because I think if I add this understanding to what I already know, it just makes it richer.
Yep.
And so as I kind of applied it with my businesses, I was able to then simplify what I'd learned from my own experience. So something I'd learned already in the book, I applied it and I was able to make more sense of it. I could then articulate it in a way that anybody else could understand.
Yeah, I think that's how you're able to articulate everything in this book in such an easy way that it's easier for people to understand each and every chapter, and how you're not a topic which is so difficult to explain to people. Energy is a huge topic and it's difficult to explain and kind of make people understand.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice one.